like sunshine, like springtime, like something's in the water and I'm taking a deep dive. I'm feeling so weightless, like I'm gonna make it, and nothing in the universe can take this. I can see it clearly now, nothing gonna bring me down. I got my head held high, I'm on my way, and I'm following the signs to my happy place. I'm walking in the light of a brand new day, and I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. I got my head held high, I'm on my way, and I'm following the signs to my happy place. I'm walking in the light of a brand new day, and I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. And I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. And I'm right where I belong, in my happy place.
Hi, welcome to the Yang Lu Lin School of Medicine at the National University of Singapore and our Healthy Longevity webinar. We have Richard Siow on tonight, who's going to take us a little bit off the beaten path and talk about consumer health and longevity. During his talk, please use the Q&A function to ask questions, and we'll try to get those to Richard. Before we get there, though, we're going to talk to have an undergraduate in the lab give us a talk on CEBP beta, a transcription factor important for obesity.
Thank you for the introduction. Hi everyone, I'm Grace, a Year 4 Life Sciences student who is currently working on my final year project in Dr. Brian's lab. Today, I'm going to present a paper which was recently published in the journal Frontiers in Aging. Here, Alessandro Bitto and his team have shown evidence that CEBP beta LAP could increase fat metabolism and protect against diet-induced obesity in response to mTOR inhibition. Before we start, let me introduce the rationale of the study. With the rise in sedentary lifestyles and poor diets in industrialized countries, there is an increasing prevalence of obesity. This is a problem as obese individuals have a higher risk of many chronic diseases such as cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, and some types of cancers. Moreover, the biggest risk factor for most of these diseases is old age. Considering how older and obese individuals have a much greater risk of getting these diseases, this results in a high-risk population for multiple comorbidities. To date, some therapeutic interventions that slow down biological aging have shown to promote longevity and delay age-related diseases. One example is rapamycin, which inhibits the mTOR pathway. One of the many key players in the mTOR pathway is a transcription factor called CEBP beta. Simply put, it acts as a traffic light that produces go or stop signals to control a variety of processes in the body. More specifically, today, we're going to look at how CEBP beta controls fatty acid oxidation in the liver. This involves the breakdown and utilization of fats. Generally, CEBP beta can exist in two main forms. Firstly, we have the liver activating protein, also known as LAP. It acts as a green light to tell the liver to break down more fats and protect against obesity resulting from high-fat diets. On the other hand, we have the liver inhibitory protein, also known as LIP. It acts as a red light and inhibits fat breakdown. As mentioned earlier, considering that obesity and aging are overlapping risk factors for many diseases, the researchers had this question: would an anti-aging intervention such as rapamycin affect diet-induced obesity in adult mice? To test this out, mice were either randomly assigned to a high-fat diet or a low-fat diet. They were also either given no treatment or a daily injection of rapamycin. After 6 weeks, researchers found that untreated mice on a high-fat diet experienced diet-induced obesity. This can be seen from how a high-fat diet caused about a 50% increase in weight as compared to mice on a low-fat diet. Similarly, a high-fat diet caused a 40% increase in the mice's original fat mass. However, rapamycin prevented this diet-induced obesity. Mice on a high-fat diet that received rapamycin gained barely any weight and accumulated significantly less fat despite similar caloric intake. Through Western blot analysis, rapamycin was also shown to increase LEP levels in mice, regardless of diet. Next, researchers wanted to find out if the direct activation of CBP-beta was enough to prevent diet-induced obesity by increasing LEP levels to promote fat breakdown. To test this out, they used adavovirdipivoxil, also known as ADV, which was a drug that could activate CBP-beta. This time, the treatment group received daily injections of ADV instead. Western blot analysis showed that, like rapamycin, ADV also reduced both weight and fat accumulation. Similarly, ADV also increased LAP levels in mice, regardless of diet. In mice on a high-fat diet, ADV also increased the production of various enzymes involved in fat breakdown in the liver, such as the four shown here. In conclusion, this paper showed that rapamycin, an established longevity therapy, could prevent diet-induced obesity by increasing CBP-beta LAP levels. Likewise, adavovirdipivoxil could also do the same, making it a potential anti-obesity drug. Current literature has also shown that genetically modified mice, which could only produce LAP but not LIP, showed a significant reduction in age-related impairments and an increased lifespan in females. So, what do these findings mean? Considering how ADV can increase LAP levels, researchers believe that at appropriate doses, ADV could be effective in preventing obesity and delaying aging. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thanks, Grace. Some of you may know that we're starting intervention studies here in the US in clinical trials, and we'll probably be doing a rapamycin study. So if any of you listening happen to get in that trial, this is not a free ticket to eat a high-fat diet. So you still have to eat a healthy diet. So keep that in mind. It's a pleasure to have Richard Siow on the show. He's the Director of Aging Research at King's College and an elected fellow of the Royal Society of Biology. He's also the specialty chief editor of Frontiers in Aging, among his many other roles, his editorial roles with journals. He's on the strategic advisory board of the UK All-Party Parliamentary Group on Longevity, which is trying to do important political work to emphasize the importance of health span and lifespan. And he has many other titles I could go into, but I think you'd probably rather hear Richard talk. His title is Consumer Health Longevity from Cell to Society. That's just a narrow little window of space there, Richard. I good luck trying to, stay focused on that tiny window. So.
That's great. Thank you so much, Brian. It's great to be on the show, and I'm really pleased to join you. Although I have London in the background, I'm actually in Zurich, Switzerland this morning. So it's great to be with you all wherever you are, or if you're listening to the recording. So as Brian says, I'm going to cover everything from conception through to end of life and beyond in the next 20 minutes. And let me share my slides. And I will focus on the life course. So an easy task ahead. So hopefully you can see my slides now. And as Brian introduced, I am based at King's College London, and this is a picture of our campus. Well, it's a helicopter view, and if I just point out where our campus buildings are, if that works on my slide deck, here we go. Okay, so the red circles show where the different campuses and also the hospitals associated with King's College Medical School are located beside the Thames. And I'm very fortunate because my office is just behind the London Eye there. Anyway, I'm sure you all prefer to hear about healthy aging and longevity rather than a geography tour of central London. Let me move on to my next slide, if that works. Here we go. Okay, I'm sure you've all seen similar pictures. A baby born today could well live to be over 125 or 123, whatever the oldest person to have lived has reached, and beyond that. Is that true? Well, we don't know until it happens, but we're very hopeful. So, frontiers of longevity. I think it's an important area that we all consider from day one of life all the way through to the end. As I said, it's not about old age, it's about how we get there. and how we can delay the onset of age-related conditions in society. It is a bit of a minefield, as we know. It's a maze. So another Time magazine cover. How do we live longer better? That's the million-dollar question, or now it's apparently several $billion that are being put into foundations and charities to answer that question. We've heard a lot about supplements in this series. You've heard a lot about the molecular and cell biology, longevity pathways. But have we heard enough about the world's healthier places? What about the health benefits of faith? And above all, how can we still have fun as we consider all these important questions? And recently, I've been really interested in health in the workplace, how we can be happy, healthy, and also productive, especially with the aging population demographic and also the increasing age of the workforce. And in our own lifetimes, we're going to face this issue. How can we be productive and also happy in the workplace as we age gracefully? So let me move on to my next slide. Okay, we're academic scientists. We know a lot about the molecular pathways of aging, age-related diseases, putative pathways leading to longevity, signaling pathways being switched on. Why do we age? This is a function of time. Aging is the progress of time from day one of conception through to the end of life. But along the way, we are living in society, we are eating, and we are healthy. My own background is in nutrition. I graduated in nutrition and also cardiovascular physiology. So I have a particular interest in diet, nutrition, and nutrigenomics in healthy aging, longevity, and of course, age-related cardiovascular diseases. So how do we approach this issue for the consumer? Throughout the pandemic, we've been going to the supermarket, hopefully, and less to the clinic or the emergency room, and we've been shopping. Perhaps we've also been a little bit more sedentary. So there are impacts of lockdowns, a pandemic, and so on, independent of any clinical symptoms that we may have experienced over the past 2 years. And how has that impacted our aging trajectory or longevity trajectory? And what we can do about it in our workplace. Our workplace is now at home, in our home office, work from home. How has that changed our longevity trajectory just by having a different set of stresses in our new workplace? You also will know that in 2020, the World Health Organization and the UN launched the Decade of Healthy Aging, a wonderful year to start to think about healthy aging. Through the pandemic, we have actually learned a lot about health in aging societies. And this is a busy slide just showing a page from the WHO website. In 2021, they launched a baseline report, Decade of Healthy Aging. What do we need to take into account as we consider aging society and population aging demographics? What influences health in older age? Well, I don't need to cover that. We probably know about it already, but focusing on the social factors, the workplace factors, and also access to health for the consumer. In the consumer place, that's the supermarkets that I've already referred to. And what is needed for healthy aging? Important questions that we're all familiar with. How can we tackle these effectively in society for the consumer? So let me move on. Population demographics. Every week you hear about this on the show, or every month. We know that the demographic pattern is changing. We know that, societies are changing. There are going to be more older people in the workforce, more older people going to the supermarkets. That's my view on the longevity society. And we are, in fact, getting healthier. But we need to consider the differences between developed countries, less developed countries. What are the issues facing the third world? What can we learn from the third world to better implement also in our own societies? And above all, how can we remain productive with the aging workforce? It's not only about age discrimination, but it's about productivity, reduction of stress, maintenance of cognitive wellness in the workplace, all important considerations as we consider this change in demographics. This is another figure, busy figure from the WHO baseline report, but 3 areas that I want to highlight. Enhanced reserve at a younger age, from day one of life and conception, all the way through to the end of life. Can we delay the decline in function? That does not mean disease processes. Decline in function in the workplace, decline in function in going out to exercise, going to the supermarket. And can we modify this rate of decline? What are the lifestyle interventions that we need to consider in the workplace, in the home, in the supermarket, and how we can monitor this decline and modify the rate through the interventions through diet, for example, and exercise. Sounds very simple, but there's a lot of science that needs to be more robustly undertaken, both in academic institutions and also with our industry partners, our large corporates, where they are going to be employing an aging workforce. Another figure from the WHO, many different points to follow, but I just want to focus on the last box here. How can we accelerate impact? And this longevity webinar series is already accelerating the impact through awareness of the longevity and also healthy aging agenda. How we can engage more stakeholders, not only academics and large corporates, but also the sources of funding, the investors, the foundations, the governments. All of these are very important as we consider that the impact of aging, not only in this decade, but the decades beyond. How can we mobilize new resources, financial resources, technology resources, and also new ways of thinking about the longevity, the financial longevity as well. Most of the time, we're concerned about our bank account, our wallets, and our families. These are major sources of stress as well. So we need to encourage new mindset regarding our workplace, our financial longevity, and also technology transfer, how we can better monitor the aging trajectory, our longevity biomarkers, and so on. And of course, building a culture for impact. And that is what we're doing through these webinars, meetings, but also getting out to the community, starting at the kindergarten level, not only in aging societies. We need to change the mindset of the young so that they can be more resilient as they get into their teens, because the mind gets set in early life. So another figure from the WHO. I think I'm just going to focus on this final point here, a better distribution of global investments and progress. As we move forwards in our longevity trajectory, even our academic research, industry R&D, all of this is going to be generating wealth, but it's also going to need financial investment so that we can take the right decisions, do the right research in the interventions, the lifestyle interventions, the supplements, the diet, and so on, and how we can give back to society, the aging society. So there needs to be this distribution of investments, and this is part of the global financial longevity burden as well. We need to consider what are the resources that need to be put in place in society to implement our longevity intervention strategies. And of course, we are now on the back of the pandemic. We know a lot more. There's a lot more technology at our fingertips, on our smartphones, in our pockets, and even as we go shopping. We are being tracked all the time. So we need to now rethink the urban physical environment. This is another very interesting recent Nature Aging paper. We need to think about longevity readiness, not only in the cities, but the supermarkets, the workplaces, and so on. We're not only tackling age-related decline or disease processes, but we're enhancing resilience to really increase what we consider as healthy longevity. So some of the factors here I find really interesting. Let me focus on the top line, exposure to urban pollutants. It says air pollutants here, but there are many other pollutants in our culture, in our workplace, and so on. And of course, there are biological and physical and also mental health consequences of all of these factors. Exposure to our environment. Some of us know already the term exposome. And how does that enhance biological aging? Not chronological aging, but how we might measure biological aging more accurately, and how this impacts on cognitive decline, risk of chronic diseases, neurological, mental health issues, increased stress, and above all, this is going to impact on productivity of the aging workforce. So we need to consider longevity readiness. Of course, as I've mentioned, and we all know, and we've all experienced the impact of the pandemic over the past 2 years. We know about the biological consequences. We know about the long COVID. But are we considering the impact of the environment, the toxicants, the exposomes, social, cultural changes, physical inactivity as we're working from home, and so on, changes in diet? How are all of these factors impacting society, impacting the consumer, the healthy consumer, not those who are with a clinical condition in the hospitals, but those of us who have remained healthy? And how we can better undertake research to identify biomarkers of how our environment has impacted on biological processes. Part of my own research is on epigenetics and also oxidative stress, which I will touch on briefly a little later on. But all of these factors, as you've known from previous webinars, are impacting the aging trajectory. Cellular senescence, we've heard a lot about immune dysfunction, immunosenescence, but what does this mean for the healthy consumer in society? A little background about aging research at King's. As you can imagine, a holistic view of healthy aging and longevity. As I mentioned, we have teaching hospitals, medical expertise, clinical trials, everything a major university would have. But more importantly, our aging network focuses on health sciences, informatics, digital health, artificial intelligence and informatics at the consumer level, how we can integrate with consumer goods companies to better learn the needs of the society. We have a focus on innovation, entrepreneurship, tech transfer, and also industry partnerships, where we can learn from large corporates how to implement their business strategies into our academic research. We have an entrepreneur in residence who are interacting with our industry partners to drive entrepreneurship and innovation, from undergraduates all the way to professors. Technology transfer and how we can learn from industry are key areas of our aging initiative. Of course, global societies, policy interventions, governance, law, all important as we implement strategies for the consumer. So all the way from bench to the supermarket is our approach. From day one of life through to the end of life and beyond. King's has a very strong faculty of theology, where we are also considering end-of-life care. And that might also enhance longevity at that time. Let me move on quickly. As I've mentioned, we are a strong academia industry hub. We have an advisory board from both sectors, many corporate partnerships, which I will describe later on. But the concept of financial investment in research, even venture philanthropy, we need to integrate with the investors, industry, and also academic robust research to better inform our longevity interventions. This is a slide showing our NHS Trust partnership through King's Health Partners. I won't dwell on the excellent patient care, clinical trials, but also translating back to the consumer in the supermarket. We need to know what we need to buy. It's through education, it's through accessibility, and so on. World-class research in our biomedical research centers, everything we've heard about, molecular pathways, interventions from cancer through to neurodegeneration, mental wellness, all impacting on consumer health as well. We've heard already several times from our friends Alex Zakhanov and Evelyn about the importance of AI, artificial intelligence in longevity medicine, data analytics, advanced bioinformatics. What are the biomarkers that we haven't discovered yet? How can we better integrate data analytics in the consumer market, at the supermarket level? So this is not only molecular pathways, but the amount of data we are gathering from the consumer sector, consumer health, consumer testing, which is now commonplace, all needs to be integrated into data analytics to also better understand the value of the data to different stakeholders. So we have developed a strategy where we can better integrate industry data, academic data, and also financial longevity data using fintech infrastructure. Very important as we consider the necessity of using multiple layers of data and also integrating this from healthcare through to social care, consumer wellness, and also to better inform the policymakers, be that government or also large corporate, because this is coming back to the workforce health concept that needs new policy in the workplace. One of our key partners is Unilever. That's why I have emphasized consumer goods. And over the past 5 or 6 years, we have developed a deep partnership with Unilever R&D teams globally. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I spent a year on sabbatical secondment with Unilever at their global R&D centers. And that led to a new King's Unilever Bioscience Innovation Hub that was launched almost 2 years ago now, where we are integrating consumer goods research into our biomedical science and also data analytics. I don't have time to go into it, but it's fascinating, and I'm sure you're familiar with many of these brands. At King's, we also integrate twins research, and that's really important as we understand not only genetics, but also epigenetics, and we are monitoring twins in the community. And many of you will be familiar with the work of Tim Spector, my colleague, who heads up Twins UK and also genetics and population health. And he has developed with the company Zoe, the COVID-19 symptom tracker, where we are at the consumer level tracking indices of health and wellness throughout the pandemic. And this is really important as we consider how we implement the data into policy. And much of the data from the COVID-19 symptom tracking app, at least in the UK, has influenced policy decisions by the government in when we are even changing the restrictions. Environment and health. We know about air pollution very well, but are we aware of our workplace environment, how that impacts on our longevity trajectory? And also, of course, our financial longevity. Can we work into our 70s and beyond? And is that sustainable through our health? And also how our employer is taking care of our health and wellness in older age to maintain productivity. I've already mentioned policy, how we are integrating our policy institute, policy research, into the longevity agenda to better inform policymakers across many different sectors, from charities to the government through to funding bodies. Very important that we get this right at this stage so that we can better assess the needs and also the financial burden on society to better implement not only healthcare strategies, but also consumer health and wellness strategies. And this requires perhaps a change in policy, a change in law at the government level. As Brian introduced, King's College London and Aging Research at King's are partners of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Longevity. And this is a policy group in the UK where back in February 2020, just before the pandemic hit the UK, we launched the Health of the Nation report. And this was launched at King's by our then Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. And it's really important that we do continue to consider adding years to life and also life to our older years, especially productivity in the workplace. The societal impact of the workforce, the aging demographic, very important to consider strategies for healthier and also longer lives. Arising from the Health of the Nation report, the APPG for Longevity also has an initiative for open life data. And I mentioned the necessity for data analytics, not only using AI, but to also better understand the data that can be collected by the consumer. So this could be shopping data, lifestyle data, of course, diet data, and beyond, workplace data, workforce data, the value of the data. How can this be used for healthy longevity? How we can use data-enabled technologies that we all have, we all love. How can we better implement that for throughout the life course, not only for the older people in society, but also a better understanding of how the data can impact our lives today. Solutions for scaling up smaller projects, implementing novel technologies across the private sector, public sector. This all requires academic research, robust data analytics, together with our industry partners. Enhancing the digital health infrastructure, we have all benefited from that. Digital health, including certificates, including biomarkers, testing regimes, and so on. How they can be better implemented into our lifestyle trajectory, our shopping patterns, and so on. And also building public trust in the data. It's through education, awareness of what these apps are doing, how they can benefit our lives at the supermarket level. So the APPG for Longevity has also developed Business for Health. And this has multiple pillars, how the workforce and the employers can also enhance health of society. So business influence on workforce health, health via products and services, and also external influences of businesses on the communities. And this is to investment in public health interventions as well. I don't have time to go into this. It's all on the APPG for Longevity's website, where you can find this information. Very important as we consider novel academic research together with our industry partners. So coming back to the Exposome, I've talked about diet and food ecosystems, lifestyle factors. Of course, we all know about sleep behavior, diet, exercise, but also the social factors. Cultural norms, what you experience out in Singapore is very different from the UK, which is very different from South America and beyond. We need to integrate our longevity research with cultural norms, workforce patterns, and also our understanding of psychological and mental stress and mental wellness, which is different in different cultures and regions. So this is the whole exposome that does impact on the biological pathways that we know about. What can we do to better understand these factors with our industry partners so that we can better develop the interventions from diet through to supplements and beyond? This is a slide that you've probably all seen many times in this webinar series. My own research is actually focused on antioxidant defenses and molecular biology of redox signaling. Again, I do not have time for that, but this impacts on interventions for healthy longevity across the life course. We know that babies are now being born to perhaps mothers with gestational diabetes, mothers who are slightly older in age. And how does that impact on many of the biological pathways? And what are the interventions that can be put in place at an early age to mitigate consequences in old age? Of course, we all know about nutrients, the food metabolome, environment, the microbiome, and so on. All of this needs to be more robustly measured. What we are eating, how we are eating it, when we are eating it, and impact on our metabolic activity. And this is a lifelong adaptive process. Again, I don't have time to get into the details of this slide, but we really need to understand the life course approach and how this impacts us when we are healthy. We don't need to wait until we're old or with an age-related condition, but what are the interventions? What are the biomarkers that we need to track when we don't have outward symptoms? And how can we best do that to mitigate and delay the onset of all of these age-related conditions? One of the areas that I've been working on more recently is epigenetics, the epigenome. It's not only our DNA patterns that determine our life course trajectory, but also modifications of the DNA. Again, not enough time to talk about this in detail, but DNA methylation is an important area. SNPs, histone modifications, all of these can be impacted by our diet, our lifestyle, workplace stress, the microbiome. And what can we do by altering our diet, supplements, and how that impacts on our DNA epigenetics and epigenome? So this area of nutrigenomics, I think, is going to be really important over the next decade, how we can take interventions for the consumer and understand their impact on biological processes. One of the companies that ARC has partnered with is Moodoo Health, using a consumer health platform to measure DNA methylation, the genetics and also the epigenetics, and how the exposome, all these factors in our life impact on DNA methylation. The field is still in its infancy. We know about methylation or aging clocks. There needs to be much more robust research, especially how interventions can be effective. And that's interventions at the consumer level, in the supermarket, and also in the workplace, not only what supplements do and on what pharmacological interventions can help with. Another partner is SHAPE. Now, this is a workforce questionnaire, how we can measure workplace productivity based on the employer and also personal factors, the individual, the person, and also the workplace environment. As I mentioned earlier, our workplace is now in our homes. What impact the workplace has on our genetics and also epigenetics, very important. So partnering together with SHAPE and Moodoo, we hope to better understand epigenetics in the workplace and how a change in workplace environment can also improve the longevity trajectory based on the biological clocks and epigenetics. We are also partnering with the International Institute of Longevity. This is a think tank based in Liechtenstein, and they are gathering world leaders in the longevity field to better understand the impact of workplace health on the longevity trajectory. So I think this is an important way that we can make an impact by bringing together the top minds and also implementing this through policy and education at the consumer level. So just to summarize and finish my talk, I know I'm running a little bit over time. Our Longevity Innovation Hub focuses on not only the academic and clinical research, but also how we can integrate investors, the financial longevity, the financial technologies that are required to implement our strategies for the consumer. Partnering with corporate entities, large global corporates such as Unilever, Nestle, and beyond, the insurance sector, and also the banking sector, all very important as we consider health and wellness and stress for financial longevity. Networks through the WHO, technology infrastructure through advanced data analytics and AI. We're working with technology companies such as NVIDIA to better understand how their technologies can be implemented for longevity infrastructure and longevity interventions. So just to finish, We are taking a life course approach. And as Brian quite rightly said at the beginning, it's very difficult to focus. We are taking a holistic view, and we have expertise at each stage of the life course through King's College London. We are trying to enhance the resilience of the consumer at the societal level from a young age, through education, through policy interventions. The investors, the philanthropists, how we can better invest for healthy longevity, how we can better use data analytics to feed back for the value of data. The data is also an investment. And finally, of course, academic research partnerships. We are proud to be partnering with National University of Singapore as one of our key partners in our global network of academic and also industry partners, so that we can better influence policymakers, not only in the UK, but across the world. These are some of our academic partners. And with that, I would like to end with my final slide. We're all scientists trying to enhance lifespan, of course, health and wellness throughout the life course. At the same time, remaining forever young. Very important. A young mindset as well, as important as physical and also perhaps financial youth. Just to finish, we are developing at King's as a mini plug that through our King's Business School, so this is not biosciences, we're developing a program for the business of healthy aging. If you're interested in that, go to the website, that's at the top. And this focuses more on financial longevity and also investment in the longevity sector. With that, I'll end by this famous phrase from George Bernard Shaw: we don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing. So it's been great to play with you and the audience this afternoon. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Richard. There's so many things we could talk about. Maybe we could start with King's College. And, I think that every time I hear about this aging program at King's, I think that it's amazing what you're trying to do, but you pretty much covered the entirety of the university. You even talked about theology. And so how does one, as a director, pull all these, herd all these cats together and get them focused on outcomes that are impactful? I'm impressed by even that you're even trying to do this. I mean, how do you do this?
Well, that's the billion-dollar question. I need a few more $1 billion to be successful doing that. Well, each faculty, each academic colleague, of course, has their own focused research, but how we can put them together so that they can better understand that their focused area is also overlapping with our longevity mindset. Everything from theology through to our business school is, of course, to do with healthy living. And you take it to a personal, individual level. And then they better understand. They've got aging parents. They've got age-related diseases. Then they can see how their research focuses on and can be implemented in their own longevity trajectory. So that's how I start. That's a little secret. But of course, as we take a life course approach, I mean, to be serious, we know that genetics and epigenetics especially can be influenced at an early age. This is, pre-birth, during gestation, and how we can better measure and understand the impact of in utero life on aging trajectory 60 to 80 years later. I think that's also a very important life course approach that everyone can relate to. How we can use the molecular biology that we all know and love to interest the business school, because by better understanding the molecular sciences, we can also implement this to enhance investments. And, you may think, oh, that's a big stretch. How do you educate someone in our economics faculty in molecular biology? But once they understand what they buy in the supermarket, for example, the nutrients in their food has an impact on their own health and life course, then they start to better understand the impact of, the molecular pathways. They want to know more. So it's all about education. And in the same way, our clinical colleagues and our bioscientists, they're not so much interested in the financial longevity, but they need to know where their next grant is coming from, who's going to be funding them. And I've actually interested many colleagues in the opportunities I've mentioned investors, venture philanthropy, those kind of concepts. So that's how I pull everything together.
Well, Richard, I think you're doing a great job, and this is something that's totally needed because there really aren't programs at universities that are trying to do something like this. But I could just have to say that I hope you have. I've been at universities my whole career, and I hope you have a good psychiatrist. That's.
I'm still smiling, Brian. That must be good.
You mentioned a few words that I thought maybe our listeners haven't heard, and I thought maybe we could talk a little bit more about them. One of them was longevity readiness. So I like to think I'm ready for it, but I agree with you that societies aren't quite ready and governments are not there yet. So how much progress are say, governments making on longevity readiness? And can you point to somebody example that's being more successful than others?
That's also a very good question, Brian. Were we ready for the pandemic? Preparedness. We knew that something was coming our way. And that's not rocket science. And clearly, aging societies, we've known this now for decades. How can we be ready for it? Are we ready? Will we ever be ready? That's why through the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Longevity in the UK, we are better informing the policymakers. I was quite surprised that they were not as ready as they should be. And of course, different nations, different countries have different healthcare policies, different healthcare budgets, and so on. But how can we be prepared? I think it's through education from kindergarten all the way through to the prime minister level. They need to better understand the risks. And it's often the financial risk. Can we afford an aging society? What is the economic burden of a society that's predominantly over 50? The aging workforce as well. And it's only through integrating academics with industry leaders that we can better influence the policymakers to be ready. And quite often, we save for a rainy day. So that's financial saving. We're saving for our pensions and so on. But are we saving our health? So that's also an important question. Readiness, longevity readiness. We want to live until, we're 135, but can we even afford to do that, let alone physically and mentally, but financially? We need to be prepared. So this is the readiness concept or preparedness, and also to mitigate inevitable health decline. We know it's going to happen. It's the biological processes that we're all exposed to, but we can delay the onset of decline by better monitoring. For example, the biomarkers, the blood biomarkers, the saliva biomarkers, the epigenetics, and so on. 1,001 biomarkers that everyone is working towards, especially, you could say, mental wellness, cognitive wellness. I don't use the word disease or decline or impairment, but it's wellness. It's more difficult to better define a wellness biomarker to maintain rather than biomarkers of disease and decline. And that's what we're working towards.
You mentioned another word. You mentioned another phrase, public trust. And, I think from a scientist perspective, we would expect that public trust in science and medicine might have gone up due to COVID-19 because of the rapid onset of vaccines and, record-breaking pace of successful approaches to try to treat this pandemic. But I'm not sure public trust has gone up, especially in a country like the United States. It varies a lot country by country, and Singapore has a lot of public trust. Other countries don't. I don't know where Great Britain stands on that. But, public trust is important for health span, too. We have to convince people that the societal changes that we're trying to bring about are actually good for people and beneficial in the long term. So I'm not sure where you think public trust has gone with COVID and where it needs to go to be successful and for longevity.
Well, that's a good question. Very important that we gain public awareness. And awareness and trust come from education, how we can better understand, how we can make a consumer choice. I think the consumer goods industry do a very good job in marketing at the supermarket level. How can we also educate the consumer to trust the interventions that we are proposing? The public through the pandemic has been educated, extensively in what is PCR, what is lateral flow, what is an mRNA vaccine. This kind of language would have never hit the consumer before, but now people are aware because they needed to be aware. A choice of vaccine or even not to be vaccinated, that's a consumer choice through education. We need to demystify all of the terminology. And I think over the past 2 years, we've been much more amenable to testing because we've had to. You've heard this before, the lateral flow test. It's been accessible. In the UK, it's been free to everyone. We've been encouraged to do it. In some countries, if you don't have a certificate, you can't go to a football game or a restaurant and so on. So it's the necessity, but it also comes through education. We know about it and we do it.
Yeah. I've added just a few minutes to this, and that's your fault. You went late, so you have to stay 5 more minutes, if you don't mind. And what I'm going to do is bring in Merrick Kuchenberg, who there's a lot of questions from the audience as well. Before you get started on the questions, Merrick, maybe you can tell us, just for a very short period of time, what you're doing as a postdoc for the Center of Healthy Longevity.
So hello, everybody, and thank you, Brian, for the kind introduction. So I am personally interested in the application potential of perinatal stem cell circuitome. I'm especially in cardiovascular disease, but I'm also looking mostly into cardiovascular aging and stem cell senescence. So let me jump into the questions because we have quite a number of them. So the first one I would like to start with is, how do we practically use aging biomarkers to positively influence changes in healthcare policy?
Okay, that's a great question. I think the biomarkers for policymakers are data. They need to be educated in what biomarkers can be measured at the consumer level and also cheaply, economically. What are the biomarkers that will make a difference to policymakers? How we can implement this, for example, sugar tax on drinks. That is a good example of policy interventions to enhance life. But what was the biomarker that was required? Is that pre-diabetes biomarkers and so on? So there are a number of biomarkers that are readily available, that can be measured. The data is valuable to the policymaker. The data is valuable to the consumer goods companies as well, how they can better understand the shopping patterns. In fact, that is one of the markers that influences what we see on the shelves. But if a consumer is actually benefiting from a change in dietary pattern, that will benefit society, that will benefit the company as well to make more of those certain products. So that's an important area that we better understand consumer biomarkers that could be even sold together with the product by the consumer goods companies.
I think the next one is also linked to this one when we speak about biomarkers. What are the most promising biomarkers currently that could influence the next decade of healthy aging research and medicine?
Well, if you've got another 3 hours, I could go into that in quite some detail. But one of the hot areas that many researchers are looking at are, of course, the DNA methylation clocks, aging clocks. How can we have a robust biomarker of our biological age? And what actually influences that? So the biomarker is saliva DNA methylation, for example, because everyone likes to spit. Less people would like to give blood, so it's accessible. What are the influences on that? And what does that in turn impact? Does it impact on our mental well-being? Does it impact on our gut microbiome and so on? So you can have biomarkers for all of these areas. Another important area are really the consequences of a change in diet. How can we pick that up? And what are the metabolites of the supplements or our diet on the microbiome? What is the impact? A lot of microbiome biomarkers that are being developed at the moment at the consumer level as well. So again, sorry, I don't have time to get into that in more detail.
So you were speaking about a microbiome. So there is actually a question about that too. The microbiome in various locations of the body is often associated with disease outcomes. So do you also look at the biomarkers regarding these microbiomes towards longevity in your research centers?
Yeah, absolutely. Not my own research, but at King's College London, we are correlating the microbiome, in fact, of twins. So that's different. And how the microbiome profile impacts on each individual twin that may well be genetically identical. So that's a really fascinating area of research, absolutely. So biomarkers of wellness and also biomarkers of disease can be gained from microbiome analysis. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. One more, if you have time. Does your work in King's allow you to also partner with the social arm to strategize on increasing fertility rate, which can also alleviate the social and economic issues presented by increased aging population?
Absolutely. I think the fertility rate, and as I mentioned during my talk, perhaps the age at which women are giving birth now, maybe in their mid-30s and beyond, is now increasingly common. And there is an impact of, consumer wellness on fertility as well. This is a big area of research. Again, I don't have time to get into it, but the biomarkers of fertility do clearly match also biomarkers of aging and longevity. As we clearly know through the menopause, many biomarkers will change. And that is a change also in fertility. So how we can enhance fertility and also the health of those at childbearing age and what impact that has on the offspring, on the child, is really important, maybe 70 or 80 years after the child is born. So that is a hot area of research also at King's and our academic partners.
Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, we have a few more minutes. So if you have a couple more burning ones, that'd be quite great.
Well, give me a second.
Well, maybe I'll jump in while you're looking. The UK All-Party Parliamentary Group, kind of a great idea, interesting timing right before COVID. We had Tina Woods on talking about it. Right. How's it going? Has it maintained momentum? Is it still building?
No, absolutely. As I mentioned, the two new initiatives, the Open Life Data Initiative and also Business for Health, these are directly associated with the APPG for Longevity. How we are bringing our parliamentarians into these new initiatives is really an education for them. They see the value of integrating with business, especially consumer health, supermarket data, and so on. Because this will mitigate healthcare economic burden later on. Because if you keep the consumer healthy, they're going to access healthcare less often, and the symptoms are less. So clearly, this makes economic sense. And also the value of data, open life data, how we can integrate data from the consumer into healthcare policies. I think that is also very important. What we understand by healthcare data as well, or consumer data, wellness data, and the value of data. Data can be traded, as you know, as well. So all of this is an important aspect of the APPG for Longevity. And I think Tina did a great job when she was on a couple of months ago to highlight what the APPG is doing and moving forwards, how we are integrating much more with our parliamentarians. So the Minister of Health, Minister of Education, Minister of Science, and so on, they all need to support the initiative to enhance both academic research and also provide resource so that academics can work more closely with industry partners.
Yeah, the data questions are fascinating one. I'll come back to you in just a second, Merrick. The data questions are fascinating one. I think that on the one hand, with AI, we can do so much more with data. On the other hand, there's also more of a protectionist view in some countries on data. The UK has done a fairly good job of allowing people to access data. What have they done right, and how can other countries do that as well?
Well, data privacy is really important, and also you mentioned AI. I think explainable AI is also a very important concept that we need to educate those who are giving away their data. Of course, public health data or consumer health data has influenced government decisions throughout the pandemic, when we lock down, when we need to work from home again, and so on. So access to data and also the willingness to give data, especially if there's going to be some incentive. For example, coming back to the consumer in the supermarket, we are giving our shopping pattern data to the supermarkets all the time. In return, we are being rewarded through the points that we get. So this is actually tokenizing the data. That's another huge area. The data can be tokenized, gives it a value. Is that going to be valuable to different stakeholders, valuable to the government? The government needs that data so that they can make policy changes to enhance healthcare provision, especially in aging societies. So, of course, data privacy as well. It's a big area, which we don't have time to get into now. But different countries are tackling data very differently. I know in Singapore, it's much stricter how we handle the data.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. Merrick, did you have another question?
Yeah, when we're talking about biomarkers, maybe I can also ask this. Are there any major limitations of using aging biomarkers to positively influence changes in healthcare policy in countries?
Are there limitations?
Limitations of using aging biomarkers.
Sure. Well, a biomarker isn't only about aging. There are many different biomarkers, and I think a holistic approach to biomarkers is also very important. You can't just take one biomarker. It needs to be several integrated together, and there needs to be better academic research to validate the biomarkers in a specific context of the individual. The biomarkers may not be useful for a certain population group, but useful for others. So it has to be a holistic view to integrate many different biomarkers, the validation through academic research, and then only bring that data to the governments to say, okay, a certain population subset are exhibiting certain biomarkers, it's been validated. So it's not just one biomarker of aging. I just want to clarify that.
Regarding nutrition, fruits, vegetables nowadays are bred for marketability, not necessarily for health. Do you consider that in your studies? All the modified from veggies and so on that are stripped genetically so that they grow better, do not cry when cutting them, and so on. But they might remove some healthy compounds implicated in health benefits as well.
Not to mention they stay ripe forever, but taste like nothing.
Yeah, that's a very important question. Farming methodologies are changing. We're now talking about meat alternatives, cultured meat, and so on. Yes, absolutely. Of course, the quality of what we're eating does directly impact on our own personal biology. So clearly, if certain food categories are fortified with certain supplements, that's going to confer a benefit. If farming methods reduce the nutrient content of certain foods or the vitamin content and so on, that's also going to have an impact. So the quick answer is yes, it is important to consider the composition of what we eat. But that, again, I could come back and talk for another 2 hours on that.
Yeah, Richard, you've just committed yourself to about 13 more hours of show, but tonight we have to go. So thanks a lot. I'll let you get back to Zurich, and I will have to do this again and get into more detail on some of these issues.
Okay, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thanks, Richard. I want to remind everyone to use the chat function and the panelists and all attendees option to leave comments. Please remember to look for news for our center and the School of Medicine as well as after the end credits. Our next speaker, we're going to take a little break, but we'll be back March 3rd with Mike West, who Some of you may know he was the founder of Geron, one of the very first biotech companies in the aging space. And now he's on to other companies. So we'll talk about the past and the future of the biotechnology and aging. And just tonight, before we go, I'm going to leave you with the voices of healthy aging.
My name is Dr. Bernice Catherine Harper. I am 92 years young. I think I'm pretty lucky because I've utilized the whole concept of prevention. My internist, Dr. Lee, some 10 years ago, told me that he wanted me to stop eating sweets and drinking soft drinks because I was African American and he did not want me to get high blood pressure and diabetes. I followed his dictates and I lost 36 pounds. I don't eat off of a large plate, I eat off of a salad plate. And I'm doing great, and I think that is a preventive component that helped me to live to be 92.
My name is Gladys Lanio, and I am 79 years young. I tell everybody how old I am. I'm very proud to be 79 and being the way I am. I have been very blessed. My biggest fear of getting old is dementia. The best thing about aging is being able to sit back and don't care what people think. I'm proud of what I am, that I have the interest in life that I still have. And hope. Still have hope.
I'm feeling like sunshine, like springtime, like something's in the water and I'm taking a deep dive. I'm feeling so weightless, like I'm gonna make it, and nothing in the universe can take this. I can see it clearly now, nothing gonna bring me down.